Welcome to another YouTube video on employment termination and severance pay. My name is Christopher Neufeld of Neufeld Legal, and in this particular video we're going to be discussing the aspect of the smoke and mirrors approach that you often effectively see from large corporate employers. In particular, those employers in the petroleum sector and the mining sector, when they're offloading employees, especially those hardworking hourly employees who work out in the field, work on difficult sites, and they lose their job because of quote-unquote restructuring, business adjustments, remodeling, or whatever they want to call it. And those individuals then get a nice termination package, which is presented in such a way that the fired, terminated, laid off employee is looking at it and says, this looks half decent. Is this sufficient? Is this adequate for the purposes of which I'm looking? And then they look a bit further and they see, oh, there's these conditions, there's these releases, there's these time frames, there's these expectations as to contacting a lawyer, so on and so forth. And oftentimes, they take it upon themselves to quickly respond back and saying, I don't want to lose out on this opportunity. I don't even want to ask for an extension, which almost every employer will provide, especially given the fact that very few employees, in my humble experience, even ask for these extensions, which are really appropriate, especially when you're looking at these very short time frames that employers are providing their former employees to actually review what is in fact a very important and very difficult decision at a very particularly arduous point in their career. They've just been laid off. They don't have employment, especially when the market's not good for them, especially when they've been working for such a long time. And now they find themselves having to make a decision of great consequence. And why do I say it's great consequence? It's not simply about that. They have a family oftentimes they're supporting. They have a mortgage that they're paying for. And oftentimes a lot of these employees have relocated on the basis of this particular employment. So they've moved somewhere, and there's even a likelihood that the market for their real estate is gone down. So the value, the money, the moving allowance they received, they don't receive a departing allowance. Yes, they get their termination pay and severance pay, but there's that allowance and that they got to move there, but now they're saddled with a house in an area that sort of restricts where they can work. And if their spouse is working in that same area, they're sort of constrained to actually working in that area or else finding a way to relocate. And they don't necessarily have a job lined up. So where does the smoke and mirrors come in? Well, it plays off of this in the sense that when you look through the document that is presented to you by the employer, there's a presentation of what seems to be substantive. It seems to be that here is what is made out to be a very good offer, and it's in conformity with what the law is and has a presentation as to it's over and above what would be provided. And then there are time limits, restrictions on it. You have to do this in this amount of time. You have to approve it. You're constrained. You have to sign a release. You're giving up all your rights. And it's a very, very arduous aspect that you're faced with because there are issues potentially that you've kept under wraps, not knowing whether or not this, in fact, has impacted your termination. It reflects upon the arduous nature of the work that you've undertaken, because it might very well be that to maintain your job, you've put in the hard hours, but on top of that, you had to deal with abuses and harassment and other improper conditionalities in the workforce. You put up with it because you thought it would protect and secure your job. And you even got potentially good reports, or you get fraudulent reports, maybe a bit of a heavy term, but reports that are designed to protect your supervisors, let's call it. And you had to deal with this kind of stuff. And what you're doing now is you're signing that all away. And part of the reason is, and I fully understand this, is that, as we said before, you need to protect the interests of your family and what your investments have been. So that what happens is you're presented with an offer. And the employers know that you need to take, it's a substantial amount of money, but you're probably, and this is just some of my own estimations, especially when you're looking at people who are working in the oil and gas sector and mining sector, working long hours, overtime, out in the field on an hourly basis. Those individuals very often are going to be underpaid on their termination and their severance pay and other aspects of their pay. And they're not going to feel like they're going to be able to challenge their former employer on this. Because you got to remember, their former employer has tons of money in the bank, tons of money financed. And it's not even their money personally. It's not the CEO's money, not the HR person's money. It's somebody else's money. And their job is protected. And part of their job is to control costs. So what they're going to do is they're going to fight should you challenge them. They might give you a bit of an inkling here, but they're going to challenge you. So when it's that scenario, people are very apt to simply bend over backwards and accept whatever's being taken. And because of that, and because the employers know that, yes, they do know that, they give you far less oftentimes than what they might be legally required to, or what they know they should be doing, because that's how they got in that position. I don't like to say that, but that is a reality with business. The employers, the HR people, they start low. They're going to be able to give something, but they don't give everything. That's just not how they work. So what do you need to do? Take the time that you have right after you receive your termination and severance package and engage legal counsel. Talk to them, talk to ourselves, and see what options are available to yourself. Like I say repeatedly, we'll provide you with our initial assessment without cost. It starts to address some of the things. It starts to allow you to see whether there is more to be looked at. And at the same time, while you're starting to do that, you're going to be able to get an extension. Almost every employer and the HR people are going to provide you with an extension. If they don't, then you're in a bit of a bind. But then you still have to move quickly because you can respond to stuff. And a lawyer such as myself can quickly give you some perspective as to how to deal with these matters. And if you can't get the extension, it's very likely your lawyer can get you extension. Getting extensions is part of the course in these things. But reviewing the stuff, especially when we get the materials, is within our capabilities to do a very quick initial analysis and give you some initial guidance. And that's what you need to be looking at. If it's framed effectively and it's providing you what you really want, yes, move forward on it. But if there are options available to yourself, you should be talking to the lawyer and properly engaging them as to what might be your solutions, what might be your strategies. And look at that. pursue that. It's a substantial amount of money. And the scary thing is, and I hate to scare you with this, but the reality is that people, especially hourly workers in the petroleum sector, that's oil and gas, and the mining sector, are often leaving an incredible amount of money on the table. And it's shocking how much money is being left on the table. And that money, in many respects, is rightfully due to yourself. But people are leaving it on the table. And you should not be doing that, no matter how long you've been working for the company. Even if you've been working for 2-3 years, sometimes there's significant amounts of money that are being left on the table and people don't realize it. And that is why you have to oftentimes speak to more than one lawyer to understand what is available, what the angles are, and what protections are in place for yourself. Because the lawyer needs to be ensuring that you have some degree of protection as they move forward. It can't be just about getting a resolution and throwing caution to the wind. We take a cautious approach to this, as should any lawyer do with yourself, because it's about protecting your future, your family's future, your kids, your spouse, yourself, your investments, all that kind of stuff. Even protecting your ability to get future employment. Those are important aspects that you have to consider, and that's what we look to do. And that's why you should immediately engage with legal counsel and speak to them and see where you stand, whether there's something to be pursued. And that's our objective. Well, I hope you found this YouTube video informative, and we look forward to speaking to you should you be looking to address your own particular situation when it comes to termination and severance pay. In particular, as we say, from oil and gas companies and mining companies, where you've been working out in the field, long hours, many hours, and you might well, in all likelihood, have been slighted with respect to your pay. Thank you very much.